Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Kunenpert. I'm the VP of Systems Engineering for Solus. I'm here with Mark to talk about the dapr event mesh. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Mark Dijker. I'm a developer advocate for Diagrid, and I'm a dapr community manager. And I've been an Azure MVP for the last couple of years. Today, we're going to talk about what is dapr, do a short introduction. I'll give a quick demo of the pubsub API that's using in the Solus Cloud. And then Thomas will take over with the dapr event mesh. So let's start with the basics. What is dapr? Well, a lot of organizations these days are building these kind of distributed systems, usually microservices. A lot of small components are involved. They need to communicate with each other. And there's usually some state management involved and some pubsub elements involved. But it's for the developer, they need to think about quite some cross-cutting concerns. And they need to think about how do I do end-to-end tracing, and how do I encrypt all of my calls to all of these other services. How do I do like proper logging? How can I do like retries of calls? So they have a lot of stuff to think about. And that's where dapr comes in. So dapr is the portable event-driven runtime for building distributed applications across any cloud and edge. And it really runs across all of the major cloud providers. It even runs on VMs or physical machines. So anywhere where you can basically also run Kubernetes, you can use dapr. What I really like about dapr is that it speeds up microservice development by providing a common set of building block APIs. And these are the building block APIs. So dapr makes it really straightforward to do like service-to-service invocation, and to use like key value pairs with the state management block, to do publish subscribe, to use input-output bindings. There's observability built in. You can use the actor model. You can use different state stores, secret stores. There's a configuration store also available. You can use the distributed log pattern. And with the latest version, in version 1.10, there's now also long-running workflows. So dapr offers you a really broad feature set of what you can do in your microservice applications. So here's an example of how the communications work between your application and dapr, because dapr is using a sidecar model. So your application is talking to this sidecar. And you can do that via straight HTTP calls or gRPC. So here are some examples of using the different APIs. So for instance, if you want to invoke a method on another service, you can use this invoke endpoint. If you want to get some state, you can use the state endpoint and provide a key of the state you want to retrieve. In case you want to like publish an order, you can do a post to this endpoint. If you want to retrieve a secret, you can use this get endpoint. And if you want to start a new workflow, which as you can see is still in alpha, you can use this get endpoint. Now, if you don't want to use the HTTP or gRPC protocols, there are also client SDKs available. So especially if you're used to working in typed languages such as C# or Java, then it's definitely nice if you can use our client SDKs. It makes it a bit easier to interact with dapr. So about dapr itself, it's a CNCF project. It's been submitted to CNCF since November 2021. It's currently in the incubation maturity level phase, and it's the 10th largest CNCF project. So there's been quite a big adoption of dapr. Also, the community is doing very well. A lot of people have been contributing to dapr over the years. A lot of people are fans, like over 20,000 GitHub stars, which is really great. And we also have a very active Discord community. So it has over 5,000 members. So if you have a question about dapr, that's really the place to be. So there are plenty of really big organizations contributing to dapr. So even although it originated from Microsoft, since it's now a CNCF project, a lot of big corporations are contributing to dapr, which is really great to see. So there's really good future about using dapr. So I talked about the building block APIs, and here you can see that the sidecar is interacting with these building block APIs. But in the case of state management, of course, your state needs to be stored somewhere and retrieved from somewhere, right? So there needs to be like an actual implementation of that state. And those things are called components. So when it comes to state components, we have like a lot of different flavors of components when it comes to state management and actually all of these building block APIs. And we have these components across all of the major cloud providers, and also a lot of these are like open source as well. The same is true for all of these other building block APIs. So and this makes it relatively easy to actually start with one component, but then you can actually switch to another component. And I'll give you an example how that works. So let's say you have two applications, application A and B, and application A will like publish an event, and application B will be subscribing to that event. And let's say we're using Redis, we're just running it locally, we're doing like a quick inner development loop. So we're running Redis locally in a container. But application A won't be talking to Redis directly. Application A is using dapr. It's talking to the dapr sidecar. So we're using a dapr API, in this case, publish event async. That's the .NET API. So the application has no idea about Redis. It talks to dapr, and then dapr needs to figure out what's the underlying pubsub component here. And that's done via a component file, let's say YAML file. And in that YAML file, there's a name, and that name is used in the application. And there's also a type and some metadata that's about the underlying implementation of the component. So now we're using Redis. So let's say we're doing that locally, but let's say we're now moving into the cloud, we're moving into production. Then we only need to switch out the YAML file, and we can use something like Solus PubSub Cloud. So the application code stays exactly the same. All right, so let's do a quick PubSub demo that is using Solus Cloud. So it's the same thing as before, as we saw in the slides. There's a checkout application that will be publishing, and there's an order processor application that will be subscribing both to this topic, and that's running in the Solus PubSub Cloud. So if we briefly look at the .NET apps in this case, so there's this checkout application, and we're using the dapr client here. We're using the client SDK. We're getting an instance of the dapr client, and then we're using the publish event async method. And here we specify the name of the component. And here we specify the topic that we're going to publish messages to, and then we're submitting the order. And this is actually the message itself. So that's the sending end. And then at the receiving end, so that's the order processor. Again, we're using the dapr client here. And in this case, we are mapping an orders endpoint to this topic. And this topic refers to the same PubSub component and also to the same topic. So this PubSub component name is very important because this comes back in this YAML file here. So this is the same name as we saw in the source code. So this is how dapr figures out, okay, what kind of component, what kind of connection do I need to make? And here is then the type specified. So in this case, it's the Solus AMQP component. And it has some metadata about how do I actually connect to Solus. So in this case, there's a connection string, and there's a username and password. So when you do this in production, then you don't use like straight username and password here. Then you would use like actual key value references, and use like a secret store for this. Right. So I'm closing this, and I'm starting the subscriber application first by using the dapr CLI. So I'm starting it here. So this is now listening. And on the other side, I'm starting the checkout application, will be publishing messages. And we should see, yeah, it's publishing on this left-hand side, and it's receiving messages on the other side. So that seems to be working. All right, over to you, Thomas.
All right, thanks a lot, Mark. That was a great overview of dapr. Now we're going to speak about the dapr event mesh and what exactly it is. So we just saw a demo of Mark's dapr application talking to a Solus Cloud broker. And what if I come along and I also deploy my dapr application, perhaps in a different cloud? How do we cross-communicate between these independent dapr deployments? So why is this important? Well, deployments today, they're becoming increasingly distributed. It could be on-prem, it could be a mixture of on-prem, it could be cloud, it could be multiple clouds. And customers and users are looking for a unified event-driven architecture model or backbone, and they need that backbone to be robust. So we're going to speak about the dapr event mesh and what exactly it is. But before I do that, just want to go over a brief 101 on Solus topics. So Solus is, as Mark demonstrated, is a messaging solution. When you push a message onto Solus, you publish on what is known as a topic, and there is a corresponding payload. So essentially, a Solus message or a Solus event consists of a topic and a payload. Now, this is very different from other technologies and how they implement topics. A topic in Solus is dynamic. It's a slash delimited hierarchical 250 character string that consists of various levels. So in the example you see here is an example of a payment application that's publishing on a topic. The topic consists of various attributes: the application, the type, the bank ID, card number, and store ID. Now, once the publisher publishes on a topic, a subscriber could subscribe to events using wildcards. So here you have examples of 3 events that are published on 3 independent topics. And once they're published, my subscribers could start asking questions about these event streams that are coming in. For example, if I wanted to get all events that were requested by Apple Pay, I would simply express a topic subscription as Apple Pay / greater than. Likewise, if I'm interested in all debit transactions, I would simply say */debit / greater than. And if I want to get a transaction or transactions that originated from a specific merchant code, I could use a star to essentially wildcard the merchant category code. So in this case, I'm saying I don't really care what payment type, whether it's Apple Pay, Google Pay, or Quick Pay. I don't care whether it's a debit or a credit transaction. I want all stores, transactions from stores that begin with 5.6, which is why you see over here a 5.6 star, and then a greater than thereafter. So now we'll talk about the dapr event mesh. So as mentioned previously, users are increasingly running their applications in increasingly distributed environments. In this case, you have a dapr application deployed in AWS. You have dapr application deployed in Google Cloud. You also have dapr applications deployed in Azure. And you might have an on-prem deployment as well that consists of a mixture of legacy applications as well as dapr applications. To create an event mesh, you deploy an event broker, in this case, a Solus pubsub broker in each location. So you deploy one on-prem and deploy one in the various clouds. Once you deploy them, you link them together to form an event mesh. Now, what this gives you the ability to do is dynamically route data. Say, for example, I'm publishing an event on-prem. That on-prem event will never leave the on-prem network until a dapr microservice in AWS, in this case, expresses interest through those topic subscriptions that I previously described. Only then will that event be forwarded from source to destination. So the event mesh does not firehose all events everywhere. It only sends them on demand when needed. And likewise, this works in any direction. It works north-south, it works east-west. You can use this as a viable multi-cloud strategy. And you could integrate between other messaging technologies, including Kafka. Okay, so now let's move into the demo. So Mark deployed his dapr deployment, and I have my dapr deployment as well. Now we're going to create that event mesh, and we're going to show the output of that. So I'm going to very quickly switch my screen to the demo environment. And here is the Solus pubsub plus console. You can see I have various services deployed here. I'm going to show you how easy it is to create that event mesh. The very first thing I do in the pubsub plus console screen is label the event mesh as the dapr event mesh. Okay, then I'm going to add my 2 services, dapr Gonna add Mark service first, add service. I'm gonna now add my Solid service. Okay. And then all I have to do is create mesh. And shortly thereafter, you could see the event mesh being created. Okay, now you can see that mesh has been created. Now I'm going to very quickly spin up a test application that shows me receiving events from Mark's application that is still running. So you can see over here that Mark is publishing out orders from his application, and I'm connected to my local Solid Cloud service, and messages are routed from Mark's dapr deployment all the way to my dapr deployment through the event mesh. So that is the demo. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this lively talk and demo of the dapr event mesh. Once again, my name is Thomas. I would like point everybody to join the Solace community. The link here is on the slide, using the link here on the slide. And Mark, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much for this demo, Thomas. Really cool to see the communication going indeed from my department to your department. If you have more questions or want more information about dapr, please join the dapr Discord. All of the links to the docs and GitHub repos are in there. And there's a dedicated channel about pubsub communication, so feel free to ask away there. Thank you.